Hey team, today I wanted to talk to you about pace matching and pace setting. Now, one of the things that often causes us challenges in terms of impatience, anxiety, anger, frustration, these sorts of things, is when the inner pace, the rate of revs we're running on here, is poorly matched with the world out here. And so what pace matching is it's an attempt to adjust your internal pace to be more consistent with the external environment. And let me give you an example of poorly aligned or poorly matched paces in that respect. So at work, I like to run at quite a high rate of revs. I like that little bit of adrenaline and dopamine in my system that gives me energy and focus to take on challenges. I like getting stuff done. Yeah, email answered. Yeah, paragraph written. Yeah, call made, whatever it is, cross it off the list, bum, 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 high rate of revs. But then when I leave my home office or I arrive in my front door and I'm still running at this high rate of revs that's been really effective at getting after it at work, and then my kids are on the go slow, They're just present, they're just relaxed. There's a mismatch there. I'm way more likely to experience frustration or annoyance with them. Hey, if you don't have kids, just imagine being at the supermarket. You're waiting in line, you just want to get your stuff, you want to get out of there. And the person in front of you seems to think this is an opportunity for whakawhanaungatanga, for building relationships and connections. And you're just like, get on, I want to get this done. You know, that's when your internal rate of revs, that sense of urgency and drive, it's not well matched to the environment you're in. So it causes those distressing emotions. And so pace matching is about slowing down that internal drive to be better suited to your environment. Now, I mentioned an awesome experience previously of having done this when I went on a New Zealand Survival Academy course. And the head instructor there, Ash, before we went into the bush, got us to actually sit down and readjust our pace to be better suited to that environment. And there's heaps of different ways you can do this, right? He took us through an exercise which got us to tune into ourselves and tune into the external environment we're in. That's the terms we use in psychology, tuning in and tuning out in terms of where we focus our attention. And the tuning in piece, that might be just paying attention to your breathing. Maybe you do a little physiological sigh. Maybe you go to just slow that inner pace a bit. Maybe you do what they call in the Defence Force tactical breathing. You breathe in for 4, hold for 5, out for 6. Maybe you do that a few times. Those are both ways to shift your attention to what's going on in here, but also there are activities that actually slow the rate of revs you're running at, and that's because they focus on the exhalation. And when your breathing is more heavily focused on the breathing out piece, slows down your heart, dials down that stress mechanism, lowers those revs, and that makes you better suited to the environment you're in most of the time, I mean, sometimes it's a high stress environment and you want to maintain that sense of urgency. But the mismatch often occurs when we're going from stress to calm, from fast to slow. So that's what I'm more focused on today. Another good way to do it, which is really cool, is what we call in psychology the 5 things. And this is where you deliberately pay attention to 5 different things you can see in your environment you weren't previously focused on. And then what you do is you shift to 5 different sounds that are available to you weren't previously paying attention to. So both of those are examples of tuning out into your environment. And then the final one is 5 things tuning back in, 5 different physical sensations you weren't previously paying attention to. So if you just look at this picture right now in this clip, for example, you might notice, there's a green leaf just up there behind Paul, there's a stream down there. You might notice 5 things, and you don't pay a lot of attention to them, you just check them. Check, 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 and then you move on to the sounds. What are the sounds that are available to you that you weren't previously paying attention to? Well, maybe you can hear the creek in the background running there. Maybe you heard someone in the room next door just scrape their chair. I don't know. But 5 different sounds you weren't previously paying attention to. And then again, we tune into the body, right? And it could be that breathing regulation we just discussed. It could be other things. What's the weight of your bum on the seat feel like right now? What does your right big toe feel like right now? Mine's a little bit moist and sweaty, if I'm honest. But these are all techniques which dial down our pace and help us better match the environment we're in. Highly recommend you try this stuff out before you walk in your front door, perhaps before you go into a meeting if you've just rushed from somewhere else and you don't want to feel that, that adrenaline and that dopamine, that, anxiety or impatience. You want to dial it down a bit. Or perhaps if you're like me and you do some work from the home office, it's there. Or perhaps it's just where you get out of your car and you're about to go walk the dog. Whatever it is, this is really good stuff to be able to be intentional about, that matching the pace of the environment you're in. I also, as well, though, at the beginning of this clip, mentioned pace setting. Now, this is a really interesting concept that comes from de-escalation training. I do a bit of de-escalation training. It's interesting stuff, eh? Like, how can you be more aware of the situations and the circumstances that might, kick off, where people's emotions might be escalated, and then how do you engage with them in a way to mitigate that risk, but also to dial those down if it happens? And one of the techniques that we talk to people about in terms of de-escalating the emotions of others is deliberately setting the interpersonal pace in terms of the volume that you're using, in terms of how quick your movements are. Because we have these things in our brain called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons enable us to operate effectively as members of a social species because they make emotions contagious. And they make us heavily influenced by other people's body language, by the non-verbal cues they give us, such as tone and volume and things like this. And so the idea of the pace setting is that you deliberately slow down your verbal pace, lower your tone. You start doing all of these things that are non-verbal clues to calm. And as a result of that, the mirror neurons in the other person's brain tend to just get contaminated and dial them down as well. I mean, the opposite of that is escalation. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to be contaminated by the escalating emotions with other people, where both of you start to ramp up? So that pace setting, that is a deliberate dialing down of yourself to try and contaminate the other person, and de-escalate their emotions. Anyway, team, that's just a bit of an elaboration on these concepts of pace matching in terms of your environment, but also, maybe in terms of other people as well, right? Calmer people, you want to dial it down, but also that idea of pace setting, that you can actually positively impact the emotions of others by deliberately just, engaging in those behaviors which signal, I'm not escalated here, I'm calm. Try that with your kids. That's what I try it with, eh? Like my kids, I find a great opportunity for practice when it comes to managing impatience, stuff like that. And that just talking a bit quieter, a bit slower, a bit calmer, that pace setting, great thing to try out. All right, team, a few things to focus on there. And as I mentioned, some of the techniques for that pace matching, breathing regulation, physiological sigh, tactical breathing, maybe those 5 things. And by the way, you might find that one of those is more effective for you than others. You might find that, the auditory stuff, tuning into sounds, is really good for dialing you into the environment. Or maybe it's the looking at things. Different things for different people. You've got to experiment, but you got this, team. Get out there, match pace, set pace. Boom!